What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we'll be joined by John Karalis from Locked On Celtics to discuss the Celtics' big Christmas Day win against Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. This game was a one-point game at halftime. How were the Celtics able to take over and dominate the Bucks in the third quarter behind 20 third-quarter points from Jayson Tatum? Just how much can be taken away from a game like this against a potential future playoff semifinals or even Eastern Conference Finals opponent should these two teams get a rematch in the postseason this year? We're going to break down all of that for you, but first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis this season. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball, NFL, they've got you covered for everything over at BetOnline. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get all of your sports betting info. Right now, you can head over to BetOnline to take a look at who the odds-on title favorites are for this season in the NBA. The Boston Celtics still leading the way at plus 350. The Milwaukee Bucks right behind them at plus 550. Brooklyn Nets at plus 1,000, and then rounding out the top five, the Golden State Warriors at plus 1,100, and the LA Clippers also at plus 1,100. So for all those odds and more, be sure to visit betonline.net to learn more about the trends and action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Joining us now is John Karalis, the host of Locked On Celtics. You can find anywhere you listen to your podcast. Just search Locked On Celtics, including YouTube. Now, John, this was a big Christmas Day win for the Celtics against the Milwaukee Bucks, the two teams at the top of the Eastern Conference. This game, John, was 1 point deficit at a halftime, 62-61. And then things just completely changed there. It really in the third quarter, but just kind of the second half at large. Jayson Tatum taking over 20 points in the third quarter. Just 7 of 10 shooting. He was sensational in that third quarter. What changed for Tatum and for the Celtics in that third quarter?
I think they were just taking advantage of some of the matchups that they had. I don't think there was anything that necessarily changed other than, Tatum saw, hey, I've got these lanes to the rim. I can get to the rim. I can get to the free throw line. He started being a little more aggressive, but also I don't think anybody was forcing things. And I think that's one of my biggest takeaways here is that in this slump, I think guys like Tatum and Brown especially forced a lot. And Tatum, he's trying to win an MVP. And I think if he gets in his head a little too much of the MVP race, then he tries to do too much. If he gets into his head, getting to the basket, if he gets into his head, playing the right way, making the right play, and letting the game come to him, then things like a 20-point third quarter happen. Because in the first half, it wasn't about him scoring. It was about other guys. It was about Al Horford. It was about just kind of keeping pace. But in the third quarter, because of all the other shots that were falling, suddenly more lanes open to the rim, and he was able to take advantage of them.
Yeah, this is Celtics team coming off a couple, bad losses against the Orlando Magic, Pacers. This win, especially against a rival like the Bucks, a potential playoff preview, if you will, between these two teams, probably goes a long way towards cementing in some continuity. Like, hey, we're getting back on the horse here. Mm-hmm. But especially you look at the defense they played on Giannis in this game, John. I mean, Giannis just 9 of 22 shooting from the floor, only 2 of 8 inside the arc, or sorry, I should say inside the paint. I apologize, which is really uncommon for him. Just what were you seeing that the Celtics were able to do to kind of slow him down in this game?
The Celtics, I think, are uniquely built to deal with Giannis. They have Al Horford, who has historically been really good in dealing with Giannis. Grant Williams, there was one play early on, I could kind of see what was happening where he went to back down Grant and he didn't move. And that's the thing. Grant Williams, he's strong. He's got a good low center of gravity. He can get low. And when Giannis hit a turnaround fadeaway jump shot on Grant Williams, and I remember tweeting out, the Celtics will live with that shot if it means not being able to get to the rim. And that's what happened with Grant, with Blake. We saw some Blake Griffin minutes. Blake, strong guy, good base, does not let Giannis get to the rim. All of that, when they got back, and it also, I should note that it starts with the shots falling a lot as well, because the Celtics shot 50, what's the number? 59%, 49% from three. So that allows them to get back and set their defense versus Giannis getting the ball in transition. And once the Celtics defense is set with Al and Grant and Blake for a short stretch, and those guys, even Marcus Smart, those guys can really get low and prevent Giannis from getting where he wants to go. And we saw him very willingly settle for jumpers. And once we saw him settling for jumpers, I said, yeah, this is going to be a good defensive game for the Celtics.
How much, John, do you take away from a game like this? How much, or how little, I should say, do you take away from a game like this that could be kind of a potential preview of like a semifinals rematch or a conference finals preview?
I mean, I think it kind of works both ways, Jackson. You take away a lot in that the Celtics do have personnel that can frustrate Giannis, and there aren't many teams that can do that. And I should say, I had a funny exchange with Joe Mazzulla after the game where I said, you guys limited Giannis. He says, yeah, limited. He had 27 points. But we're just talking about how the Celtics limited him, and he still had 27 points. It's kind of an extension of the Eastern Conference playoffs where they did limit him and frustrate him, and he had an otherworldly performance. So that's the type of player that he is. But the Celtics can take away from this a very strong feeling that we can force Giannis to play the type of game where if he's going to get to 27, it's going to take a lot of hard work. He's going to be very tired at the end, and he's not going to involve a lot of teammates. But also at the other side, it is as much as a Christmas Day as a marquee game. It's still, the Celtics have 27 wins, which is great, but it's still early, and you got to get yourself up to 57 wins to win the East, 60 wins to win the East. So there's a lot to go. So in that respect, you say, hey, this is a good building block. It's a good reminder that when you play your best, and the Celtics haven't been playing their best, but when you play your best, you can be the best team in the NBA, and you can beat the other best team in the NBA, and just keep building on it. It's a reinforcement of good habits. The Celtics displayed a lot of good habits where in the past couple of weeks they've displayed bad habits. You can take away from that, but you also don't want to get too high, because when the Celtics do get too high, that's when the bad habits come back.
Rob Williams has, been back for a few games now, coming off the bench. It just, how has he looked since returning? And is there maybe a decision to be made here further down the line, John? Like, given how well the Celtics have looked with Derek White kind of being that fifth starter alongside the other guys, I mean, does Joe Mazzulla have kind of a hard decision down the line as to who becomes that fifth starter for the Celtics?
I don't think it's that hard of a decision. I think Rob's going to ultimately be in line for that. I don't think that I think getting back to double big is going to be probably a good move defensively, especially if like Al Horford can get back to like the shooting that he's displayed in the last two games. He had a little bit of a rough stretch, just like the rest of the team, but 5 of 10 in the last game from three, 3 of 6 in this game from three. So if Al Horford can be a spacer, and we saw how much he had to be respected in this game, and that opened up some driving lanes for the Celtics. If that can be the case, then you can stick Robert Williams in the dunker spot and feel like, okay, it's not going to mess with your spacing, because if anybody wants to come over, then you just got lobs to Robert Williams. So I think him back in the starting lineup is going to be an eventuality with Derek White coming off the bench. And that's fine too, because you can start second quarters with Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White and Jayson Tatum and Robert Williams or Al Horford. And you basically got a starting lineup as your bench unit. So that's going to be a pretty nice development for the Celtics moving forward. Rob still is up and down, though. He's good on the help defensive side. He's obviously, he can catch lobs, but he's also struggling a little bit to catch up. Joe Mazzulla is a different, has some different terminology, some different sets, some different defensive kind of philosophies, and those things are going to take a little bit of time. So this is a little bit of a preseason type of feel for Robert Williams, but he's showing flashes. And I think once he's up to speed, a move to the starting lineup makes sense.
The Boston Celtics handed Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks a lump of coal for Christmas. Can they continue to build on these good habits? When will Rob Williams be back in the starting lineup for Boston? Of course, you'll have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Celtics. John, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
You got it, man.